Good evening and welcome. Tonight we will be going over the history and geography of Barda in Azerbaijan. Now, just a quick disclaimer in that normally on these videos, if you're new here, welcome. Normally in these videos, I pull out my tablet and we check out this region in Google Earth. But unfortunately, this area has some not great pictures. All the sites that I'd want to show you don't have slideshows. So, there's no point in doing the tablet tonight. So I'm sorry if you enjoy that portion of my videos. This was a really obscure place to research. But let's backtrack and talk about Azerbaijan. If you've never heard of Azerbaijan, it's okay. It's one of those kind of obscure countries in Europe/Asia. The Caucasus region here is kind of between Turkey, Iran in the south, and Russia up here. And it's one of those links between Europe and Asia, where technically Azerbaijan is on Asia, but the culture is very European. So it's Eurasian, right? And don't say, well, they were in Eurovision, because Australia was in Eurovision, so apparently anyone can be in Eurovision. So that doesn't necessarily make it a European country, right? But anyway, Azerbaijan. I'll link my Azerbaijan playlist up there if you want to know more about Azerbaijan. I have lots of videos about Azerbaijan. But like I said, Barda was a bit hard to research. It takes up about this area here in Azerbaijan. You can see the city of Barda right here. I only found a few sources about the history here and the geographic region, and they were all kind of confusing. You can definitely tell that they had been through a translator, so I picked out what I could. So here I go, doing my best. If anyone knows more, please leave down in the comments there. If any more information, I would greatly appreciate it. I always do when you guys do that. But essentially, geographically, this is just a farming region. There's not much else to say about the geography. It's just farms and a city there. It is in the historic Azerbaijani region of Karabakh. Now, some of you who know are like, wait, Nagorno-Karabakh is over here. Well, that is a whole thing in and of itself, isn't it? That is a huge conflict ongoing in Azerbaijan today. I'll just give you a little brief overview. In that Armenia is right over here. You can kind of see the Nia here, or in Armenia. Nagorno-Karabakh is between Azerbaijan and Armenia during the Soviet Union times, because this area was under the control of the Soviet Union and the Azerbaijan SSR, Armenian SSR. The Soviet Union tried to divide up their different republics by culture, by ethnicity. So this region was technically part of Azerbaijan, even though it's more culturally Armenian. So once the USSR broke up and these countries gained their independence, it became an issue of who should control this area, and a vicious war broke out. The conflict is still ongoing. It's in a ceasefire as of this video. It's September 2024. It could literally flare back up any moment, and we'll talk about that in its history, because that affected Barda quite recently. So, Karabakh was not necessarily these borders, and I think these borders have since changed since 2021, I want to say. I think it's a lot bigger now. That Azerbaijan claims, at least. So it's in the Karabakh region, but it's not part of the conflicted region of Nagorno-Karabakh, if that makes any sense. I hope it does. So let's backtrack in the history of this town. It seems that the town itself was founded by the Sassanids. The Sassanids, I don't think we're the first people that lived here, because I found lots of information about people that lived here before then. So I'm guessing that, people lived here, but the Sassanids founded this city. So what was before? It was part of a region known as Caucasian Albania. Ignore the people upstairs. It has nothing to do with the current country of Albania. Completely different cultures, completely different naming structures. They just happen to be the same in English, okay? It's nothing to do with Albania in Europe today. Caucasian, of course, after the Caucasus, you can see the Caucasus Mountains up here. Caucasian Albania. So, the Sassanids, right? Alexander the Great swept through Turkey, conquering the Achaemenid Persians, and just continued heading east, conquering as far as he went, and creating more pockets of his empire. When he passed away very unexpectedly and very young, those pockets were broken up between his various generals, and the Sassanids were led by one of his generals. I should say that dynasty was founded by one of Alexander's generals, and they were very prevalent in what was Persia then became Sassanid Persia. So the Sassanids established this city, but it wasn't necessarily part of Sassanid Persia. It was part of Caucasian Albania, which I think was under the suzerainty of the Sassanid Empire, the Persian Sassanids. It's all very complicated, right? I had to try to decipher this through very poorly translated English. So again, I'm doing my best. If anything I'm saying is completely wrong, just let me know in the comments and I'll pin it, okay? I read that in 552 there's evidence that this was actually a big Christian center, which is very interesting because the Armenians are the Christian ones in this region. So some Georgians, but the Armenians are the Christian ones. So clearly that culture leaked over here. I also read a source that talked about conflict between the Byzantine Empire and the Sassanids that controlled this region. And eventually the Sassanids pushed them out. So there's probably some Byzantine influence in the Christian aspect of the town here as well, because they were a Christian empire, the Byzantines, the Eastern Roman Empire. Islam would eventually make its way into the area slowly but surely, and that was very much advanced by the Arab-Khazar wars. So the Khazar people invaded this region. I didn't write down the years. They invaded. The Arabs were invading from the other direction. Barda was the site of quite a few conflicts during these wars. And it kind of went back and forth over who controlled the city, the Khazars or the Arabs. But nevertheless, both cultures the Arabs still around. Both cultures were Muslim. And so definitely Islam was here to stay, and still is in Azerbaijan as the predominant religion of the country today. In 752, Barda became the capital of a region called Aran, which I'm pretty sure is where the name Iran comes from today. So you can imagine it was that kind of Persian-influenced culture. They built fortress, they built some big walls. Some of the walls are still standing today, unfortunately. No pictures on Google Earth. There's also a beautiful mausoleum built in the 1200s in Barda, and that is still standing remarkably. You'll find out why in a bit. And it's really pretty. It's that beautiful kind of seafoam green color. And apparently every brick of it has Allah written on it, which is really cool, I think. I like when bricks have secret messages written in them. So that is still standing, and that's the only real evidence of that time period. So what happened here that's all that's left? Well, the Mongols happened. The Mongols came in the 12th century and completely razed the city, completely destroyed the city. Timur would come in the 15th century, also known as Tamerlane in English, and conquer the city. And then in 1736, Nader Shah would come through and did what Nader Shah did best, and destroyed the city as well as he conquered it. A brief history of the various destructions of Barda. Barda today is a nice, thriving little city. It's not huge, it's no Baku. It's not all skyscrapers and modernization, but it's a very well-to-do city today. Mostly thanks to the industrialization from the Soviet Union when the Soviets took over Azerbaijan and controlled it during the time of the USSR. The one thing that I found the most information about happened on October 28th, 2020. So the ceasefire here in Nagorno-Karabakh ended. Armenia and Azerbaijan went out in an all-out war at the end of 2020 and a bit into 2021. And it was quite vicious. And gosh, there wasn't enough happening in the world at the time. They had to reignite that conflict. It was very devastating on both sides, but on October 28th of 2020, the Armenians essentially bombed Barda. It was more of a missile strike. They sent missiles that exploded and killed many people and injured many, many more. And of course, it was one of the various war crimes during this conflict. Again, it is in ceasefire currently, thankfully, because many people on both sides have been suffering. I'm not pointing fingers. I'm not saying one side is worse than the other. I'm not saying one side is right. I'm just saying that, yes, atrocities occurred on both ends. And it's a very tough conflict. One of those just very, both sides have arguments. Both sides did very, very wrong things. And this is just an example of one of those very wrong things that Armenia did to Azerbaijan. It does not mean you get to dog on Armenia in the comments. Enough Turks do that in my comments. Please don't insult Armenia in the comments. Or don't talk badly about Azerbaijan. Don't talk badly about people, you guys. You can criticize governments, don't criticize people. They are just innocent people living their lives, But essentially, that is all that I have for you about Barda. I really tried to dig deep into the research here, and the more I dug, the harder it became to research. I felt like I was like wading in mud, like quicksand, and the more I dug in, the more convoluted the history got, and I was just sinking and sinking, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna cut it off and summarize what makes sense to me. So I'm sure that there's more to the history here, but that was all that I could find that really made sense. So unfortunately, I'm gonna leave you there for today. I'm sure we'll come back to Azerbaijan very soon because I've done many regions in Azerbaijan. Actually, I think I found more about this area than I did other areas of Azerbaijan. You could see Ashgabat is down there. That was a hard one to research. But like I said, I'm gonna stop yapping and end it here. So thank you so much for watching. If you learned a cool fact today, be sure to give this video a thumbs up and let me know what you learned down in the comments. Maybe you learned where Azerbaijan is. Maybe you've never heard of Azerbaijan. That's okay. Totally fine. Don't be embarrassed that you don't know about geography, because a lot of schools don't teach about Azerbaijan and Armenia and the Caucasus. For whatever reason, I don't understand it. I'm going to stop yapping. Oh my gosh. If you enjoyed this style of content, please consider subscribing. We'll be doing Google Earth next time because we're going to be heading over to Somalia. And not just any part of Somalia. We are going to the tip of the Horn of Africa, because Somalia is shaped like a triangle, right? We're going to the very tip of the triangle and exploring that area there. And it's really interesting, so be sure to subscribe so you won't miss out. I hope that you found this video to be relaxing and educational, and I hope that you have a good